back roads of Illinois server to farmers in central Illinois and the Midwest. Today's edition of Back Roads of Illinois. We were bringing you lasted for farming sources and information sponsored by AgriGold. We were happy to have you for a Tuesday afternoon after the planting intention report yesterday and trade front. However, hello to Chasm in Albany, Minnesota. We're having a new affiliate on KASM on Thursday afternoon as well on KSIR in Fort Morgan, Colorado. We were happy to have them on our new affiliates of the show. I am Cesar Delgado. I am your host of today's program. I'm going to talk about the planting intention report from yesterday. We were going to be recap of the report with Pam Caraway from Farm Futures. The planting intention report is in. Farmers are ready to go with their planting season, but the weather is not ideal conditions for the planting prep. We were talking about the planting prep with Seth Naeve. He is an agronomist from the University of Minnesota. Well, that the planting intention report is coming out for Monday. Now farmers are getting ready for this planting season. Otherwise, this is your rural news sponsored by AgriGold in central Illinois and the Midwest. This planting intention report on corn acreage is 95 million acres with 51 bushel per acre. The beans are down to 83 million acres with 190 bushel per acre for demand. The grain stock quarterly report is high on the soybean demand. This week is going to have more severe weather in southern plains and Ohio Valley, the Mississippi Valley. There is some significant of tornadoes and hail. Damaged winds. The National Weather Service put the state of Illinois with enhanced risk for Wednesday. Could be put modern risk on Wednesday morning because of the ingredients are there. Finally, that the Secretary of Agriculture will provide additional payment to the farmers because of the tariffs and the commodities prices are currently down for this moment right now. Secretary Brooke Rollins was visiting in Iowa for the Iowa Agriculture Association on Monday with visiting the biofuel groups and farmers in Iowa. That's your rural news and information. I'm going to talk about the planting intention report from yesterday. We were going to be recap of the report with Pam Caraway from Farm Futures. Hey, Pam, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Caesar?
I'm good. Let's recap of the report from yesterday. What was your thoughts on the planting intention report?
Well, as many people know who follow the markets, the USDA and the Planting Intentions Report brought corn acre expectations up to 95.3 million. That's nearly 5 million acres more than in 2024, and it's a good 500,000 more than the trade was expecting. Quite frankly, at Farm Futures, we weren't expecting to see that. Everyone was talking about more acres. The prices certainly show more acres, but a lot of farmers have told us that they're paying more attention to the agronomics on their farm and to the crop rotation. And we know that when you do that, it's better for your land, and your chances of a profit may be a little higher because it costs less to grow in a rotation. Your input needs are lower than they are when you grow, for example, corn on corn.
How is the reflection on the corn markets for today from yesterday?
That corn prices continue to go up. So I was just talking to a broker a few minutes ago. He's thinking there's a lot of optimism as far as biofuels. There's a lot of discussion. We had a blog on it by Naomi Bloom just the other day, where she was talking about what the corn needs are looking like globally. So if you look at the global needs, there's a lot of pressure on the safrinha crop, and China's going to need more um, corn.
What's next for the commodities markets for next few weeks?
Over the next 2 weeks, folks will be absorbing this. We're looking at, what's going to happen tomorrow. President Trump calls it Liberation Day. Are we going to liberate any of these corn stocks? That's the question. What could happen is that we could lose a couple 100,000 million tons of export demand. Um, that's going to be a problem if we see that, depending on how those tariff rolls roll out and what the response to them is with our trading partners will in part determine, where those prices go. The big thing is going to be where those stocks are. How much corn is available? Does the safrinha crop do well? Does China need more corn from us? Who has what going on? The expectation is that no matter how the crop goes in Brazil, Brazil's going to end up using most of its corn domestically. And if that happens, then that's less available on the world market. The availability of corn could temper the impact of tariffs on our prices. We've got a lot of huge unknowns right now when it comes to where the corn market's going to go. And of course, where the corn market goes, then, soybeans will be impacted as well.
What is your position on the corn stock to other countries, Pam?
So our corn stocks to other countries will depend on what their availability is, how those markets play out in those countries. Does China need more corn from us? Does Brazil export more or less this year? And we think, we've been seeing a lot of buying like on the soybean side because the prices are cheap. With this tariff war, depending on how it progresses, that could go away. Prices could get very high, and particularly high for our commodities. If we are priced higher than the market, even though we have a great reputation for quality with all of our crops, that could impact demand for U.S. grown crops.
Are you watching for the weather in the Midwest?
We're watching the weather everywhere. As everyone's been talking about, there's some discussion about drought this year. There has been a drought going on right now. I was just up in South Dakota. South Dakota has significant drought in the southwest section. So our production will be impacted by weather, as opportunity to be impacted by weather. We've seen a lot of extreme weather events in recent years, so we'll see how that goes. The safrinha crop in Brazil was planted later as a result of weather issues they were having, and so that could impact their production as well.
Tomorrow, we're going to have some severe weather in central Illinois. However, how concern about the disease can move in the Midwest like in the Dakotas?
We're not at planning yet in a lot of those areas up there. So uh, if we could get some rain, I think that would be good for starting with some strong soil moisture for shoring up available water as we go into the season. Uh, we'll just have to see how that goes. As always, we pray that everyone is safe whenever we have severe weather events.
Yeah, I'm excited about this planting season.
Farmers are ready to get out
And
there and plant.
what
They
is your
always are.
thoughts on the corn yield in Brazil?
So the corn yield in Brazil, we'll see. Right now, they're enjoying some pretty good weather, but the safrinha crop is about 3/4 or so of their total production. The big questions for us in the U.S. is not just their yield, but how much of that yield will be used domestically. And right now, it's looking like they're going to have quite a bit of domestic need, particularly with their biofuels.
How about the beans harvest for right now?
I have to be honest, I haven't looked at that. Bean harvest is pretty much over.
Do you have any final thoughts on the planting intention report?
Um, we'll see what happens as we come into this was our first farmer-based survey report. We'll see what happens as we come into later reports this year and as planning gets underway. Uh, farmers are going to be paying close attention to what their opportunities are and how this tariff situation impacts their markets, whether they're able to, how much of their crop for 25 has been sold and how much they can sell at good prices, how much they're willing to sell at good prices before.
Well, the corn prices are rally for today from the report yesterday. Soybean futures is up as well. This is your commodities markets for this afternoon, sponsored by Kyle Bumstead from Allendale. May corn is up at 5 to 10 cents. July corn is up at 3 to 6 cents. Soybean futures is under pressure on today. May beans are down at 4 to 6 cents. July beans are down at 5 to 4 cents. Wheat futures is mixed for today. KC May wheat was down at 9 to 6 cents. KC September wheat is down at 8 to 10 cents. Chicago wheat is up for today. Chicago May wheat is up at 4 to 8 cents. Chicago September wheat is up at 3 to 5 cents. The cattle markets is getting ramp up at today's exchange for the livestock markets. April cattle is up at 9 to 4 cents. June cattle is up at 3 to 6 cents. May feeder cattle is 9 to 10 cents higher for today from record high. July feeder cattle is up at 5 to 8 cents. April hogs is up at 3 to 6 cents. June hogs is up at 5 to 10 cents. Cash cattle markets is up for this week. The weights is up at 3 to 4, about 320, between 340 and there for that range. Carcass weights is up for this week at 212.14. Cash hogs markets are down for Iowa and Minnesota at 61.25. Cash hogs weights is down at 8%. This been your commodities markets update on this afternoon. We were talking about the planting prep with Seth Naeve. He is an agronomist from the University of Minnesota. Well, that the planting intention report was coming out for Monday. Now farmers are getting ready for this planting season. Welcome to our show. How are you, Seth?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me on here, Caesar. This is it's a pleasure. It's great to be with you today.
We were talking about the planting prep. Seth, how is the soil temperature for Minnesota?
It's pretty cold up here. I looked. I didn't look again today, but yesterday I looked, and soil temperatures were only in the high 30s. So we're not very warm here. We did get into the 40s, high 40s late last week. So things were starting to warm up when we had those 70-degree temperatures. It was just enough to get rid of the ice on the lakes and start to warm things up. And then we had several inches of rain and some snow and some ice with it over the weekend. So things are back down cold again, and our air temperatures are very cold. So it's really slowed our farmers up, and we have a 7 to 10 day forecast that's still quite cold. So I think farmers are more back to real life here, thinking about a regular old cold wet April.
How is the weather forecast for northern country for this week?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's still going to be cold. We've got snow, rain, ice forecasted for tomorrow. That would be Wednesday of this week. So, and then temperatures are not going to come up very much after that. So it's going to be cool. On the other hand, we've been very, very, very dry, and so I think we actually are welcoming some of this precipitation because it's going to help give us a little bit of reserve. So this is a real two-edged sword this time of year when it's nice to get out and get into the fields with nice, warm, and dry soil conditions. But that always makes us a little bit nervous about having enough rainfall to get the crop going again. So I think we got a good balance here.
Of course. What are you watching for soybean for this year because of the rain from last year?
Yeah, it's I think we're fine. I was traveling with some farmers last week, and they were concerned about the dry conditions. And my feeling on dry conditions in the spring is that we always get rainfall enough to get the crop going up in this country. And so our main limitation early on is cold and wet conditions. So I'm not too concerned about being a little bit short of moisture. It seems like we always get something to get the crop going. We're going to need rainfall in July and August, so that's a long time down the road. So I think I'd rather get a little bit of rainfall. If I could plan the weather, I'd have a little bit of rainfall this time of year and then dry off so that we can get in the fields. But I think we're in pretty good shape. Again, I think these cold, wet rains have basically given our farmers a shot of reality. And I think we're back to more of a normal situation than we were at the end of March when things were starting to get really dry and warm. And I think farmers thought they were going to be in record time.
Can you tell us about last year? Did you see a lot of diseases with rains?
Yeah, we had all of our rainfall was early, so everything came before early July, and then things kind of shut off. So we had some problems with some root rots in our soybeans, and kind of held things back a little bit. But because it tended to dry off quite a bit, I think that reduced a lot of our heavy disease pressure. So there really wasn't really tough disease problems later. Our yields were basically 100% limited by lack of rainfall during August and September. So that's our critical period. We just need more. We need good rainfall during that period, and we just didn't have it this past year.
How many of bugs problem?
Yeah, and we did not too much for insects either. So um, I think we're kind of passed through the years of a lot of aphid pressure. So even though we had some dry conditions that would kind of favor aphids and maybe even get to spider mite conditions, we didn't have much for aphids this past year, and so there's a lot of beneficial insects around. A lot of predators seem to be showing up, and we've got a lot better biocontrol for our aphids that have been our primary summer insect problem in Minnesota. If they haven't noted a lot of specific disease issues or insect issues with their seedlings in the past. So I think it's a good IPM practice if farmers really know what they're utilizing. But I'm not a huge proponent, and I know when margins are really thin that it might be an opportunity for farmers to actually save a few dollars on their input cost.
What do you recommend for DS in southern Minnesota?
Yeah, we've got some, for farmers that have had SDS, and we actually don't have a ton of SDS in Minnesota. There's a little bit around, as you mentioned, in southern Minnesota. Um, but there's a couple seed treatments, these Alivo type products, and others that do a pretty decent job. And so again, I think the issue from a very broad perspective is for farmers that know that they've had a very specific issue like SDS. There are products out there that they can use, like again, like Alivo, that do offer some good benefit for them. But to use these products broadly and blindly, I think is probably not the best avenue for most farmers. But there are certainly some products that do have good efficacy where we've had SDS in the past.
Did you see some SDS for last week in southern Minnesota?
Yeah, last year we had very little. There was a little around, but not a ton. And again, I think the dry weather, maybe we had infections early on, but didn't express itself. There is some around for sure, but again, I don't think it is certainly on the mind of some farmers, but most of our farmers haven't seen a lot of SDS even last year.
Do you have any final thoughts on pesticides control for the beans?
Yeah, I guess, as you can hear in my thoughts, I'm pretty conservative on these things, but, we've got really tight margins. This is a really good year for farmers to really practice what we used to call IPM. Uh, Scout fields. Farmers should really be out scouting fields and knowing what they have, looking at real risk assessment for using these products. We need to reduce our input costs as much as we can on soybeans. We're basically trying to reduce our losses on the soybean crop this year. So reducing inputs is one way at it. I understand we need good yields, but if we're not going to have a problem, there's really no reason to put extra product down. So I think it's a good year for farmers to really use their time wisely for scouting, and that extra investment of time may pay off in terms of reduced input costs or more timely management of these pests in their crops. So, just from a very broad perspective, I think put the effort into the crop in a year like this, and it could help our returns for our soybean production.
Of course, farmers are facing some challenges, but they are ready for this planting season.
Yeah, for sure. I think farmers are ready. I think they want to get to the field, and there's a lot of, I think there's been a lot of time to think about all of the trade issues and other other things outside of their control. I think it's a good time. Farmers are really ready to get out and do what they do best and put the crop in the ground and take care of it and harvest as much as they can. So let's get this thing rolling.
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you, Caesar. It's a real pleasure to be with you today.
We've been talking with Seth Naeve from the University of Minnesota on back roads of Illinois.
Okay, thank you very much, Caesar. Been a pleasure.
Thanks to Pam Caraway from Farm Futures and Seth Naeve from the University of Minnesota. This has been Back Roads of Illinois. I am Cesar Delgado. You have a good day.